east. Looking over to the east. So much blood is spilled with ease. Why can't you see we're all worth the same? We're all part of the human race. We're blinded by color, we're blinded by greed. Lost in a suicidal symphony. Break all the rules you're living by. You'll be free. Wake up, open up your eyes. Wake up, running out of time. They don't really give a damn about you. None of things they say are true. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Fight the fight. Future set up for regret. History repeats itself. Too much grief is causing pain. We cannot hide from our children's pain. Why can't you see we're worth the same? We're all part of the human race, but we're blinded by black and we're blinded by white. The hate in our eyes keeps blocking the light. Break all the rules you're living by. You'll be free of lies. Wake up, wake up, open up your eyes. Wake up, wake up, we're running out of time. They don't really give a damn about you. None of the things they say are true. Wake up, wake up, wake up. It's time to wake up. Lies, 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 lies. Break all the rules you live by. Break all the rules. Break all the rules you live by. Don't keep on being a fool. Break all the rules. Break all the rules. Break all the break all the rules you're living by. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, running out of time. They don't really give a damn about you. None of the things they say are true. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, they don't really give a damn about you. None of the things they say are true. Wake up, wake up, wake up.
That's right. Wake up. We're running out of time. Welcome back, everybody. This is Gary Leggiere, your host of Martian Villa, known also as the Mad Martian. And welcome back to the Martian Revelation that is upon you all again now. So let's introduce our guest, Mr. Alfred Lambremont Webre. And Alfred Webre is a graduate of Georgetown Preparatory School in Classics, 1960. Yale University Industrial Administration Honors in 1964. Yale Law School of International Law in 1967. University of Texas Counseling 1997. And a Fulbright Scholar, International Trade in 1968. Alfred has taught at two universities, Yale University Economics Department, Taxation, and the University of Texas Government Department / Constitutional Law. And Alfred has served in leadership positions in environmental protection, international law and justice, public health, exopolitics, and public broadcasting as well. And Alfred has been a host on WBAI-FM New York and Vancouver Co-op Radio, and he has been featured on major international networks, including CBC TV, CBS TV, CNN TV. Well, that's not a thing to brag for anymore. True TV, Press TV, and others. And in exopolitics, while a futurist at Stanford Research Institute, Alfred served as director of the 1977 proposed Carter White House extraterrestrial communication study, as well as a disclosure project witness in 2001. And futurist Alfred Lambremont Weber's principal social contributions have been: 1, founding the science of exopolitics through his 2000 book, Exopolitics; 2, the 2014 discovery of the omniverse as the third major cosmological body after the universe and the multiverse, through which humanity understands the cosmos; and 3, the development of the positive future equation and the ascension hypothesis that describes soul development in our universe and omniverse. And Alfred Weber states that humans are as holographic fragments of a living universe. Each of us has a holographic entity of God within us, as does each spiritual entity in the universe. We can influence events in the universe through conscious spiritual acts. This is not a metaphor, but actual reality. And I attest also that's what this show strives to do and is evidence of as well. Because it is by this show and you, the listener, which makes our fate that we will ensure the Martian revelation. But anyway, on the facesofmars.com, you can click on his image there, the book cover of his book called The Omniverse. Transdimensional intelligence, time travel, the afterlife, and the secret colony on Mars. I do want to get into a couple of those aspects, especially where we go tonight, especially in regards to all this exopolitics happening upon us now today in the world. I don't know if you caught the first hour, sir, but would you agree all this falls in the realms of exopolitics and what we see taking shape? What do you think is the bigger goal of that plan, if it is, sir? And welcome to the show for the first time, and it's great to have you on, and I look forward to help bringing forth your information, sir. How you doing?
Well, thank you. I'm really happy and privileged to link up with you in time and space, and I support your goals, and I would like to humbly dedicate our time and our interview tonight to two brave Mars explorers and whistleblowers. The first is William Whitecrow, who was a Mars explorer. He was assassinated because he was a whistleblower a few days after our Mars disclosure program on Exopolitics TV on February 10th, 2018.
Wow.
Yeah, these things are real. And Andrew D. Bashago, who was an early childhood participant in the secret Project Pegasus DARPA time travel program starting in 1968 forward, and who was a Mars explorer himself, and who was on Mars with William Whitecrow, and who disclosed both about the time travel and the secret time travel program, and about the Mars program and his exploration on Mars, which included his Mars trips with one Barry Soetoro, later changed his name here in a court in British Columbia to Barack Obama, and became U.S. president. And Andy now finds himself in a situation in which he was clinically blinded in 2018. He just, in the last couple of weeks, has had the first 2 of 8 operations to restore his vision.
Wow.
Yeah, I've got links there where people can go online and donate to his medical expenses to restore his sight. I can explain why, but we believe that he was blinded as COINTELPRO in payback by the deep state for his whistleblowing that, yeah, there's, there's secret bases on Mars. They want to keep this all secret, even though it's paid for by the U.S. taxpayers. And even though all of this should be to the benefit of humanity, the fact that we have all of these advanced technologies, the fact that we have an active secret space program, the fact that we have an active Mars, Earth exchange program, we have friendly relations between the Mars human civilization and the Earth human civilization is all a deeply held secret within the deep state. And why? Just for their profit, not for the advancement of the human civilizations of Earth and of Mars and of the rest of the solar system and of the galaxy. So it's to these two brave individuals, William Whitecrow and Andrew D. Basiago, that I'd like to dedicate our interview tonight. This is very real stuff.
Yes, indeed. And I had Mr. Basiago on the show when I started airing Back Through Time, as I phased back through time, pun intended. Listeners to this show could appreciate. Last April of last year. And I think he did say then that he was having eye issues or starting to have issues. And so, yeah, I have no problem dedicating that to him, sir. And hopefully he progresses through that. We will add, for the archive page, I will add those links on there for him, for anyone that wishes to help support him. And when he's feeling up to it again, and better, obviously, wow, eight surgeries. But, he's more than welcome to appear back on the show and give us updates or his thoughts on things, or to just let him vent out. He may need that venting, you know what I mean? And
Sure.
What better place than the Martian Revelation?
Exactly.
But definitely, obviously, you didn't catch the first hour of the news. So much going on. The race is on, isn't it? Would you agree? At least publicly now, the space race is finally gearing up. And you mentioned the deep state and Barry Soetoro, because that would mean that the deep state, yes, would have control of those issues, because he was obviously their president trying to destroy our nation. What would be their advantage once our nation was down into a globalist control, regards to what they already know and have, like you already touched base, sir, about what's on Mars? Because this might be blowing away a lot of the people's mindsets here. But then again, there are people I'm sure listening that are well familiar with your efforts, and Mr. Basiago and the secret space program and time travel and all that. It's really fascinating. And even on this show, sir, I'm going to admit the time travel aspect has hit as a major component, not only to the show Down Through Time and Back Through Time, but also hitting home personally with myself, which puts another whoop-de-doo aspect to all this. But to me, it's like, could there be manifestations of where other evidences of these time travel programs could be seen in our research? Is it surprising, in essence, sir, that it would come up?
Yeah. Well, that's a multi-part question, and there's a lot to talk about, and I'm sure that you've covered it over time on this question with your very excellent guests. So I don't know whether I'm adding to probably the very deep load of knowledge that you have, but I will add my what I know, and that is that as those of us who work in the field of Mars and in the field of our inhabited universe, our inhabited and organized universe, multiverse, and omniverse, know um, uh, uh, the United States and Russia and the UK and other nations have had an organized Mars colonization program since the 1960s, and this goes back to before the last uh, I would call it the last uh, well, there are a lot of different theories, but I will just unpack some of the theories. We can talk about it. Some of the theories are that, of course, this all began by the the attack by the Draco reptilians from Draco to the human home base in Lyra, which led to to the diaspora of the human race from Lyra, and our human colony or settlement on Earth and in this solar system on Terra on Earth is part of the diaspora from the Lyra constellation following the Draco reptilian attacks upon the human colonies in Lyra. And as we understand from the evidence, they have been three major human Draco reptilian wars in this planet. The first one, about 705 or so, 705,000 years, occurred in a nuclear war with a very large planet, Marduk, which is now the asteroid belt. And
I thought that was called Tiamat, or is
yeah,
that just? Oh,
no,
that's
it has both the name Tiamat and the name Marduk. It has both. It has both names,
right.
and 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 that was the first of the major reptilian human wars, and it resulted in the obliteration of the planet into the asteroid belt.
Like
And
Dr. Tom Van Flanderen's exploded planet hypothesis, as well as the tidal model of Hoagland's. God, I have to mention the unmentionable, but we do have to go where science has led us, don't we? Right. So that's where that fits in. Okay.
yeah,
So
yeah. Now, but I'm not through with with Tiamat yet, because this fits
right,
exactly into Mars. But there
right.
were 2 billion souls there that were so traumatized that they were put into a knot, into an interdimensional knot for about 100,000 years, and the universe spiritual governance had to deal with them. It was terrible, and we know this from the Law of One. In fact, I interviewed the scribe, the man who took down, and he told us all about it. He took down the very words from the Law of One that were describing all of this. And so those 2 billion souls eventually, after about 100,000 years, were moved interdimensionally to Earth, and they are living out their lives incarnating on Earth now, trying to, in these incarnations on Earth, get through the trauma of having lived through the obliteration that planet. However, and this is very important to understand, almost contemporaneously, about 700,000 years ago, the war moved from Tiamat to Mars, because Mars was a verdant planet. At that time, this solar system in the third density had a very active uh, uh, interplanetary society. It was a pyramidal interplanetary society between Tiamat, Mars, and Earth. And Mars was a verdant planet, as was Tiamat, as was Earth, and Mars then suffered a reptilian-human nuclear war, and to prove that,
matches Dr. John Brandenburg's outcomings from even what they found in Viking of that evidence.
yeah, and now they have found nuclear radioactive isotopes that match the radioactive isotopes from hydrogen bombs on Mars.
Xenon 129, correct.
Yeah, so that tends to be evidence that supports the hypothesis of the reptilian human nuclear war on Mars that turned Mars from a verdant planet into the oblong pumpkin-shaped planet with a thin atmosphere, with a barren surface, with no greenery on it, and with reptilian animal forms on the surface, and with a human population under the surface of about 1 million, which are the Maris terrace, which are the human Mars humans, which are our genetic cousins, and they are the ones who go back and forth between Earth and Mars, and whom Mars explorer Andrew D. Basiago met in the 1960s at a U.S. Air Force base in the company of his father, who was in effect his handler within the time travel and the Mars program. He met 3 Mars astronauts who came from Mars in their rocket ship, and there have been trips back and forth from Mars. Nikola Tesla, one of his great feats was to set up the interactive signaling atop a holy mountain in New Mexico, I think it was, and establish interactive communication with Mars, and that opened up a great chapter in Earth-Mars communication after this these series of wars with Tiamat and with Mars. Now, what that leaves us is with the great question, and this is a great question, and I'm gonna ask people here to just leave their minds open and to leave hero worship at the door and leave their minds open, because the great challenge of our generation is to prevent a nuclear trifecta. That is, will there be a nuclear trifecta of a nuclear war that will destroy the third density life-bearing planet of Tiamat, Mars, and then Earth, because it looks like that pattern is starting to repeat itself once the U.S. and Russia have pulled out of the nuclear treaty,
Right.
and we're now on an escalation, because it was just last week, just a few days ago, that President Putin, head of the Russian Federation, said, well, if you guys begin to escalate, I'm going to have to start to target Washington. And it could be that what we're seeing now is what we can call a nuclear kabuki theater, where the same souls that incarnated at Tiamat, that incarnated around Mars, and that blew up those things, are now incarnating to pull off a nuclear trifecta, and that is to blow up the third planet on Mars. Now, I believe, this is a hypothesis that I'm putting out, that the reason why 2,000 years ago a paradise son of God incarnated here on this planet, Joshua ben Joseph, and you can say, well, it didn't exist, he would just apply in, or that's the myth that was perpetrated by the chief propagandist of the Jews at the time, Josephus, who actually wrote the 4 synoptic gospels, Matthew, Luke and John, because they're all alike. They could be copy and pasted, those 4 gospels, and they could have been commissioned by the Roman emperor, and the whole thing is a myth. However, there's also channeled material like the Urantia book, which holds that no, there was a paradise son of God that was sent here, who drew a line in the sand when they confronted some of the rebellious angels in the form of Lucifer and Satan, who had taken over this planet and said, hey, this is our turf now. The kingdom of God lost out, but this is ours. But they said no. And so he may have drawn a line in the sand, so they're not going to get a nuclear trifecta to blow up Earth. That, I believe, that is the burning question of our generation now. Now, I was greatly disappointed, and I tweeted yesterday and Facebooked the following. I said, because I've been greatly alarmed by what we call the frequency genocide, and that is that Karine Hutzebaut, a great whistleblower from Belgium, who has been really exposing the pedocriminal organizations that exist in the intelligence agencies, in the churches, in the banks, in the governments, in the monarchies. And she said that she met with the head of state security of a nation who confirmed to her that there is a program to genocide 4 billion people. And if you go to Deagle.com, you will see there, and it's completely set out, and they have it for all the countries. For the United States, they have the population of the United States for 2016 is 324 million, and they have it out to 2025, and that's at 100 million, which means that they're going to depopulate the U.S. of 224 million people between now and 2025. And they do that through 5G, through the fires, through the chemtrails, through all of this. And I was...
Right.
Yep.
Go ahead, sir.
Sorry?
No, I was going to say, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but there's a couple points. One, when you were talking about Tesla, that was, I believe, in Colorado.
Yeah,
Colorado Springs,
Colorado, right?
which is where I'm at now,
Oh, wow.
right in Space Command's backyard. Two, this led to also Todd and Jenkins. Remember the early, what was it, 1912 or 1920 something? I think it was 12, of the national worldwide radio blackouts where the U.S. Navy, well, the Army, basically around the world, the military, and all the countries would go silent so that Todd and Jenkins could get those broadcast messages from Mars, following up Tesla's work, where amongst like the first, well, what could be attributed compared to like a fax machine, it would detail out, print out the blips and blashes and dashes or whatnot, and the lines of representation of the signal that was being seen, into which amongst that was a side profile of a face. Now, which, and I had Andy on, Mr. Basago, last year. I mentioned this to him, and that it was no surprise. I believe it was this contact, because the NSA, or what became the NSA, later took over. They immediately took Todd and Jenkins' findings, as well as Tesla's later on. But this could be the same basis that laid out the plan down through time base of Brookings. Now, which leads us to Stanford Research University, and what you, sir, claim, I guess you were a part of. Were you there back in the days when the Mars mission and the remote viewing and all that was going on, basically on the same floor, regards to these aspects? And you know what was found out about the remote viewing of Mars and what was described, and also what Hoagland and many others were involved with. Were you there connected to them in that aspect for those researches going on, sir? I want to get off on the right foot. So
Yeah,
I know.
yeah, sure. Yeah, this is how I went there.
Okay.
Hope
Hope you don't mind me bringing that up.
Yeah, let me. This was during the. It was a very interesting period of American history, and this was during the 1976 presidential campaign, which was between Gerald R. Ford and Jimmy Carter. And Gerald R. Ford, as you may recall, was the inventor of the magic bullet theory. Remember that?
Yes.
He was on the Warren Commission, and he was a guy that came up with the magic bullet theory, where it was this magic bullet that came through and did a 90-degree turn and did all this stuff. And he was, in my judgment, a disgrace to Yale Law School, which I'm a graduate of, and that's just my preface. Okay.
Well, you went there too, so you can make that claim.
Yeah. So Congressman Henry B. Gonzalez of Texas, who was chairman of the House Banking Committee, asked me to come down to Washington because I was at that time part of the growing number of citizens that were greatly disturbed by the apparent evidence that the Kennedy assassination was an inside job. And I had linked up with a private group called the Assassination Information Bureau. And I was living in New York, and I was head of a citizens campaign for an independent congressional investigation. So I went down, and Congressman Gonzalez asked me to coordinate with him to get a congressional inquiry going, and together we worked with the Congressional Black Caucus and Dr. Martin Luther King's widow, and we got the House Select Committee on Assassination started. And contemporary with that, President Jimmy Carter won the election, the 1976 election in November of 1976. And so right after that, I went back to New York, and that was the interim between the 76 election and 1977, January, when he was going to be sworn in. And I got a phone call from a senior advisor to President Carter. He was a senior lawyer from a prominent law firm in Atlanta who asked me, invited me out to meet with him at the Carlisle Hotel in New York. Mm-hmm. And I went, and he said, President Carter would like to be involved, but as President-elect Carter would like to maintain liaison with the House Select Committee on Assassinations that had just been set up, because he knew that I was a consultant to Henry B. Gonzalez, the chairman of the House Select Committee on Assassinations. And so we said, fine. And he invited me down to a dinner in Washington in Capitol Hill. So I went down to that dinner. And at that dinner, it was President-elect Jimmy Carter's inner circle. So we were there for that night. And I said, we began coordinating how this was all going to work and how the Carter administration was going to work. And at that time, my work was also in disclosure, extraterrestrial disclosure, and I got the concept that evening to have the first civilian-led extraterrestrial disclosure at that dinner. Oh. So, because all the ones before, if you recall, Gerald R. Ford, after the 1973 UFO flap over Michigan, he had led one, but it was all military controlled, and he had brought in former Secretary of Defense McNamara to say, oh, UFOs are all swamp gas. You follow me? And had just done a big cover-up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then I said, well, fine. Stay in. I'll stay in touch. So a friend of mine took me down to the Bowery in New York, and I met one of the main subjects in remote viewing of Targ and Puthoff, Russ Targ and Hal Puthoff. So I had to go out to the Bay Area over Christmas, and I called them up, and they said, well, come out to SRI. So I went out to SRI, and I said, look, I just met with President Carter's inner circle, and they are completely open to this. And they said, well, go across over here, and we think you should meet with the futurists here, the Center for the Study of Social Policy, and Peter Schwartz.
At SRI?
Yeah.
Okay. The futurists. You see, people? The futurists. Remember, they had the remote viewing going on there.
Yeah.
All right? Into the future and or the past. We got the findings, at least by what was put forth by the Pentagon, was it? I think you're more familiar with that, sir. Forgive my ignorance. Oh, a brain fart on that at the moment. And also the Mars mission program that was going on consecutively right up the hall. All right, go ahead, sir. Yeah. I mean, I found it fascinating.
So I went and made a proposal, and I said, look, I've just met with Carter's inner circle, and they're open to a proposal for a civilian-led extraterrestrial disclosure, extraterrestrial communication project. So it was all, they approved it. I came on board. I went to the Carter White House, as a futurist, uh, uh, it was approved by the Carter White House, and I went out to I then went out to the Pentagon, and it was there that I ran into problems because the Pentagon even though the Carter White House had approved the project for the Carter White House extraterrestrial communication project, the Pentagon, I was meeting with an assistant secretary of defense at the Pentagon, and I was hit with directed energy weapons there, and then I was hit with men in black. And
really? Now, I'm sorry to interrupt again. I have a habit of doing that, but this is a good question.
Yeah.
You were hit with directed energy weapons. How do you know? What was the effect that would make you attribute that, or did you find that out later? Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, good. Excellent question. At that time, I maintained studies of electromagnetic weapons, so I was perfectly cognizant of this. And when I went to the Pentagon, the office of the Assistant Secretary of Defense was at the E ring, at the inner ring of the Pentagon, and so I went to his office, a very large office with a secretary, and so I was waiting in there, and I'm sitting there, and she's reading a newspaper, and all of a sudden she lifts up the newspaper so that all I could see was the newspaper, and on the cover of the newspaper facing me were written in huge letters SEX, and then they kind of started beaming me. You follow what I'm saying? But
yeah, they want to catch your attention. Sex. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So they were doing mind control tricks on me. You follow me? So, and that's because the Pentagon did not want us to discover that they were in communication with
the Martian.
reptilian elements. You see, with negative extraterrestrials. Malevolence, yes. You see, because in 1954, President Eisenhower signed the Greada Treaty, which was a treaty with the reptilians, with the Draco reptilians. And essentially, that brought the entire United States as a jurisdiction, all of its law enforcement under the jurisdiction of the Draco reptilians.
And those are the ones that want to basically eat us up.
Well, because of that, the United States had a quota of baby meat that it has to give to the reptilians. The quid pro quo that the U.S. got there was this. It said, okay, U.S., you're going to become the most powerful nation on the earth. You're going to have 175 military bases around the planet. Essentially, you are the proconsuls of the Draco reptilians on the planet. But you're the slaves of the Dracos, so you're going to have to adopt the Dracos' values. So what are the Dracos' values? The Dracos' values are human sacrifice, pedophilia, war, disease, crime, and poverty. So that's why the U.S. has been at its core such a repressive nation, which goes against the values of the Founding Fathers, the values of the Bill of Rights, the values of everything of 50% of the American people that have souls. You see?
That'll explain all the abortions and everything going on. So you're saying they're demanding more meat on the menu?
Exactly. And that goes back to a treaty that was originally signed in 1933 with the Orion Greys fronting for the Draco reptilians by Franklin Delano Roosevelt aboard a battleship in Balboa, Panama. And then another treaty signed in 1948 by Harry S. Truman. And then the 1954 Greada Treaty. And then the Tau 9 Treaty signed by George H.W. Bush. Now, what happened is that once Donald J. Trump, the current president, started saying, "Oh, I'm going to walk away from these treaties. I'm going to walk away from the global warming treaty." We said, "Okay." We drafted a proposal completely with all of the policy things, and we said, abrogate this. We called it abrogate this. Okay, you really want to get to the bottom of the problems? Abrogate the Greada Treaty, because if you abrogate the Greada Treaty, you're going to pull away from the power of the Draco reptilians, because they're the core problem.
And what will they do?
Nothing, because you're pulling out, you're pulling the U.S. out from the legal obligation that you have to the Dracos. But
so they will do nothing about that, like threaten to come squish us or blow us apart?
no, because you can make deals with much better ETs like the Russians have done. That's the whole deal. So what we did, in fact, I've got a radio program, a TV program, where I went to Laura Eisenhower, who's the great-granddaughter of Dwight Eisenhower, who signed the Greada Treaty. I said, Laura, will you go in to the Oval Office with this paper and say, and put it on in the Oval Office and say, will you sign this, abrogate the Greada Treaty? And she said, yep, I'll do it. So we have all that is necessary to pull away from this death grip that the Draco reptilians have on the United States of America.
Right. Then who did the Russians get? If it ain't the Dracos, who did you mention? The Russians got somebody else. Maybe we should be talking to them guys.
Yeah. And actually, what happened was this. Eisenhower met with both parties. Eisenhower met with, first of all, with a group of them, and they are the Nordics, and they said this was right before they were going to have the Bravo test of hydrogen bombs in the South Pacific. And they said to Eisenhower, look, we can provide to you all of these positive, a lot of technology that's positive. We're just asking you, don't go forward with nuclear weapons, okay? And Eisenhower said, okay. And he wasn't strong enough. And they went forward and had the Bravo test and went forward with their hydrogen weapons. And then they went forward and signed the Greada Treaty with the Dracos. So the United States
Why would they do that? Why would they do that if there was better benevolent races out there, I guess is what you're saying?
Yeah, that's a question that we've put to Laura Eisenhower. That's a question that many exopoliticians have asked. And that is that the military-industrial complex was too powerful and they overwhelmed everybody. And they were in league with the the Fourth Reich, the Nazi secret government in Antarctica, which had taken over the U.S.
Boy, look at this all, how much meat is on the bone. There might be some listeners out there, whoop-de-dude. But no, this is, look at how much information Mr. Weber's given us. And he's just jumping around trying to put pieces together. But I think this is a good start for an opening show with us, sir. For future shows, hopefully, you'll feel the same way, where all this will get let out, because it's very important, especially where it will lead up to, obviously, what we're now faced with, the space race even becoming public, and the Space Force.
Yeah, you see, I
Public.
think it's, yeah, exactly. So I think that we have had a Space Force, and there is the secret space program has been there since the 1960s.
Oh, like Trump said, we may have a Space Force. We'll develop another one. It's like, and no one got it. He just said we may have one, meaning, we may already have one, that we have one, sought disclosure. We'll develop another one. Those are very talented.
Yeah, but we can't go down the road that we've been before, which
Right.
is the road of the Dracos. That's like saying, oh, Darth Vader's been out there and all we have to do is just follow Darth Vader again. No, we are Luke Skywalker, and that's who we are. And that's what we have to do. We have to go with and make alliances with the Regional Galactic Governance Council. They are the local governance that's in charge of oversees our planet. They're the Pleiadians, the Alpha Centaurians, the
So
Sirians.
that's why the Dracos are saying coming to eat us all, is because of the other forces that may be keeping them in check. Is that what you're saying?
Well, the Draco reptilians do not respect the law of non-interference. The way that exopolitically our universe operates, our galaxies operate, is through the law of non-interference. And that is that it's like
Star Trek.
Yeah, it's like in anthropology, if you're in the South Pacific and you come across an island with a pristine culture that has never been hit with Doritos, modern culture, you don't want to touch it, right? You want to just non-interfere. It's the same thing in the universe. There's the law of non-interference. The Dracos don't respect that, okay?
They see stuff they want.
Yeah, exactly.
Is it just baby meat?
This is basically the reason why the United States has become the most powerful military nation on the planet is because we've served as shills and a front for the Draco reptilians ever since World War II. Big effing deal, right? It's because they signed secret treaties with them, starting with FDR, Harry Truman, Dwight Eisenhower, and then George H.W. Bush. Big deal. And what it does is do you know why there are between 300,000 and 800,000 missing children every year in America? Why there is? Because the FBI and all police forces on down are on stand down orders. Those are quotas. Those missing children are quotas. They have to deliver quotas. And those quotas go into the child trafficking quotas for the solar system, for children parts, the child trafficking quotas for the Middle East, for the rest of the planet. All of that comes out of the treaty. Out of the Greada Treaty, it means that the FBI and all the police forces can't go after missing children. That's why we have so many missing children, because there are quotas for the Dracos. That's why we have testimony from military personnel on Air Force bases that they have every month, they have trucks that come in with cans of baby meat that are put on vehicles that's handed over for the Dracos. Okay?
Abortion, adrenochrome. And now we know who Hillary and all them are bowing down to and what's going on in this nation. Mr. Weber, it's okay with you. I think that's a great segue to go to a break.
Okay.
All right, now think about, please mute your mic until we come back. And I think that's a great place, people. Again, pack them and smoke them. You definitely need them this night, as well as what the Martian revelation is going to entail. Things are just getting heated up in the public Space Force, public space race. Well, it sounds, if according to Mr. Weber, you hear what, and Mr. Bishago and others, we already have. We may already have a space program. We'll develop another one. You know, a Space Force. We'll develop another one. I mean, right there's no telling. Vice President Mike Pence, we're going to put American boots on the face of Mars. Again, people ponder all that as we come back with our guest, Mr. Alfred Lambremont Weber, on the Martian Revelation.
I'll be back.
Don't run. We are your friends.
Imagine.
Gary Leggiere, your host of Mars Revealer, known also as the Mad Martian. And you're listening to the Martian Revelation, which is still upon you all now. And we're with our guest, Mr. Alfred Lambremont Weber. And I got to say, very interesting. And kind of reminds you of the scenario from that show, V. Remember that show, V, everybody out there? And is that a correct assessment there, Mr. Weber?
Yes, and that's exactly it. Because we humans are kind of a captive population, and so we really have to come into our own.
I want to talk to that committee.
Which committee is that?
Which committee? The one you told me about that oversees and looks and dictates how things get going. That committee of, I don't know, solar system watchers or defenders, whatever they're.
Oh yeah. Well, look, basically affairs on our planet are overseen by the Regional Galactic Governance Council. And that's the Pleiadians, the Alpha Centaurians, the Sirians, and others. And if you go to the website positivefuture.info, you will see there that what I'm aspiring to is to be Earth's representative to the Regional Galactic Governance Council, and I have a whole platform there. Because I believe that our situation on Earth here is so complex and so intermingled, with the possibility of a nuclear trifecta and the possibility that, as you said, 50% of our population is really reptilian. I mean, Jay Parker says that in the U.S. alone, there are 40 million multi-generational Luciferian and satanic worshipers.
Yes.
So that's part of your pedophiliacs and right there. So I
don't
think,
this committee do something then to help stop that if they know these guys shouldn't be doing that crap and sees what's going here on Earth? Or do we leave it to that King Holy Be Jesus? Is he the one dictated to come whoop their ass? And, well, you know what the scriptures say. Is that part of this scenario? I'm just trying to quickly make sense out of it, as well as for others, because again, there's some people that this is new to them, and the big whoop-de-doo of what's going on publicly about the space race, everyone racing the moon and this and that. This is the behind the scenes, the bigger picture of that reality of how and maybe we can understand what we're seeing on the surface in our world today publicly. Is there a connection? Hopefully I'm making sense here.
yeah, look, my theory is that we're on a positive timeline. See, we have a number of dimensions, and one of the dimensions is time. And we are on a positive timeline. And if you go to positivefuture.info, you'll see the positive future equation, which is positive future equals positive timeline plus unity consciousness. So the whole
Martian revelation. Listeners to this show can appreciate.
Yeah, and so basically, basically, it's a question of the second coming of Christ really has to do with Christ consciousness and a sort of a critical mass of human consciousness, occurring so that we all go from duality consciousness, which is I win, you lose, and in the nuclear age, I win, you lose means Earth becomes like Tiamat and Mars, right? It goes boom, goes into, you have the nuclear trifecta on Earth, which means that Earth is blown up.
Right. Then why does this council allow that? I'm sorry, but it goes back to that.
Well, that's the big question. That's the big question. And that is...
That's why I want to talk to them personally.
Yeah. And I think that they have signaled that they're not going to allow it. For example...
That's good.
I was a Disclosure Project witness.
Uh-huh.
And at the time that my testimony was videotaped, there was another gentleman whose testimony was videotaped also. And his job was that he used to travel in the planes that used to go from the U.S. out to the nuclear bases, that the U.S. has nuclear bases all around the world. And the nuclear warheads had to be refreshed on a periodic basis so that he would be on the planes that would go out and pick up old nuclear warheads, recycle them, and leave fresh nuclear warheads there. And he and I were being videotaped in the same house in California, in the Sacramento area, right about the same time, right before the Disclosure Project press conference happened in May of the year 2001. And he said that on all of the flights that he went, taking nuclear warheads out and bringing the recycled nuclear warheads back, they were all shadowed by flying saucers. Okay? And there are many stories and much testimony that a number of the missile silos of the U.S. were shut down by extraterrestrial vehicles.
I remember hearing of that. Yes.
Yeah. and so there is an operating belief that if nuclear missiles were attempted to be launched, they would be stopped by the ETs.
Well, hopefully all of them around the world, not just ours.
Right. No, sure. That the nuclear issue is over. And so the worrying part, the part that's worrying for me, and I just want to declare it tonight, is number one, when the parties are now walking away from the nuclear treaties, and it looks like there's a nuclear escalation happening.
Right, you think they would just come to a table again,
Yeah.
and here's what we're going to do, or we're going to walk away out of here, with our foots up each other's asses. Let's be honest, because we have a whole world here. We're either going to shape things or we're going to really take things to a whole nother level. Why doesn't there seem to be too much angst to get at a table? Or is that a deep state issue?
Yeah, because we know that same pattern has happened before in Tiamat, and the same pattern has happened in Mars. So are we having the same souls that blew up Tiamat, that blew up Mars, and that are reincarnating here to do a nuclear trifecta? And that's a hypothesis that I put out.
Yes, and that also, in a way, some scripturists out there could attribute that as in the days of Noah, so shall it be when the Son of Man returns, King Holy be Jesus, of what was going on in the days of Noah. Well, those beings from wherever to the heavens that came, and if we're dealing with something like that again, people could construe that as being the fallen angels or demons. Do you think that they would be trying to pull that off, or they don't care? But where humanity's viewpoint is to keep them all blinded while this is obviously going on. Because if these Draco dudes are doing so much, why, and if we could get out of deals, why aren't we in more control? And what is it that about us? Are we a threat to them? Somehow that we obviously need to utilize.
Yeah, well, you see, there's a complex dynamic here, which we've talked about, because there are a lot of stakeholders here. First of all, we are under a condition of an invasion of off-planet sentient artificial intelligence, a predatory, pathogenic, sentient, inorganic artificial intelligence has now invaded this planet. It's like the blob from outer space has invaded. You can go to exopolitics.
What a Terminator.
What?
What a Terminator.
Yeah. You can go to exopolitics.com. On the right-hand menu, there's a thing, artificial AI, artificial intelligence. Click on there. You'll see about 25 articles and 10 panels, that panel discussions with experts about the invasion of. No, it's not the threat. It's the actual invasion of AI. And no, but wait.
Okay.
The reason why you see everybody on street corners looking at their phones, it's not that everything on their phones is so interesting. It's that the invading inorganic artificial and sentient artificial intelligence is plasma based.
It's pulling their minds.
Yeah, that's it. You got it. It is. The PPAI built the internet. You and I are now talking on an artifact that was built by the AI.
Yes.
And that's what's going on. And what occurred was that the Falklands War from April to June of 1982, they thought it was over the Falklands, but what it was that starting about at the end of around World War One, there was a blue ET base under the Falklands Islands, and the blue ETs were trying to deprogram a deposit of plasma that had, with the PPAI, with the predatory pathogenic inorganic artificial intelligence that had been left there by manipulatory ETs, by the Dracos, and they had left it there.
So the AI did come from deep space.
Yeah.
What I tell you on this show, listeners, this show can appreciate how am I phased back through time? How am I here at a time when all this is just cruxing, where powers are shifting, and then the world is now moving, the pushing to make the Martian revelation a reality, if we have the balls to secure this timeline. Now, this is not far-fetched and actually connects to things Mr. Weber is saying, even though if he may think I'm a nut.
No, we're
in time, all things will be revealed.
Yeah, and this happened during the Falklands War on the surface. That was Maggie Thatcher, Ronald Reagan, and the Argentine Navy. Now, they thought that was about the Falkland Islands, but what happened was that starting about World War One, the Blue ETs had an underground base, and they were deprogramming this doomsday device that was the AI in this black plasma, they call it black goo, underneath Tool Island. And that had been left there by the manipulatory ETs in case anybody had tried to move them off the planet, get rid of them off the planet. Well, then they would activate the AI, and that's what they were doing. And the Brits and Reagan became afraid that the Argentines were allying themselves with the Blue ETs and allying themselves with the AI. So the Brits, Thatcher and Reagan, wanted to get hold of some of the black goo of the plasma AI to weaponize it and to make it a profit center. So that's why the British attacked the Argentines, who had a base on Tool Island, because they were interacting with the Blue ETs who were deprogramming the AI. But the British and the Americans made it into a war, and the British went down. It was just like a horror movie. They went down, they attacked the Argentines, they went down to the Blue ET base, where they had a very delicate exopolitical operation since World War I in operation. They grabbed the AI goo, exactly what they shouldn't have done. They fell into the trap of the manipulatory ETs. They grabbed it and took it back to Marconi Labs in Britain. And it was just like in the horror movies. In the AI escaped in the lab. All of the lab workers died horrible deaths. The AI escaped up into the satellite system of Britain, and the rest is history.
How? By going through the computer linked up networks?
Yeah.
Okay, like the Terminator in that sense in one of those movies. Okay.
No.
So
those movies is how they leak this story to the public.
Understood. Acclamation. Now, but how would it physically? Wouldn't it have to be programmed into the thing? Because how would it physically kill the people and then transfer itself?
Because the AI just takes over. The AI just controls the people to kill themselves.
Gotcha. So like possession in a sense, maybe,
Yeah,
and then transmitting it to brainwash others. That's what.
exactly. And then the AI took over the elites and made them sponsors and hosts of the AI. People like Prince Charles became a sponsor and host of the AI. So that in the Royal Commission, they concluded that artificial intelligence will never be a problem to humanity because he had been taken over. And then the head of Microsoft and, the long-term heads of Microsoft and all that were all taken over. So that's how the AI took us over.
That's right, and especially now with the modern day robots being fitted, bodies being made for that AI to come into its
So
its
now,
full
now,
physical capability.
now the AI agenda is to terraform Earth to become an AI planet and not a divine soul incarnation planet. So we humans who still have souls, about 50% of the planet, hopefully, have to wake up and really get back down into our souls and get control of the AI and get back into a divine agenda because otherwise this planet.
Basically saying have the demons expelled in essence. For
Yeah,
those of scriptural means that can follow this.
yeah, because otherwise this planet will cease to be a divine soul, a venue for the incarnation of divine souls. It'll be just a robotoid planet. And that's what the whole transhumanist agenda is. The
Yes.
the transhumanist agenda is just to make this into a robotoid planet where people are hearing the AI voice and they think that the robotic voice of the AI, see, the AI is imitating God. And so they think that the AI, that the software put out by HARP and by the AI is the voice of God. And then they become robotic and they transfer their soul essence into a computer and so then this planet
Or
goes
robot body.
goes goes from the divine soul column over into the robot column, and that's happening in this galaxy.
Sounds like Isaac Asimov's some of his books and stories. I'm sure you're familiar with them.
I actually
It's
had
very
I actually had hamburgers with Isaac Asimov one
Oh,
time.
really? Wow.
Yeah,
That's incredible.
yeah,
Did you guys talk about any of this interesting stuff or just pass
yeah. No,
each
no,
other?
no. We did.
Oh, wow. Well, that's interesting. Anything that would allude maybe what he was trying to tell us based upon what you're seeing in all this research leading to that. And there is certainly, I mean, I kind of touched base on the news earlier about AI and the threats that are out there, and yet we're building robotic bodies who are answering us, joking that she'll kill off all of humanity. I mean, all we need, man.
Well,
I
you see,
know what, I see what you're saying though, and I
one
can
of the
see.
more
Okay.
one of the more dangerous things, and I just like to say this in the most compassionate way, and this
Uh,
has just been over the last 2 or 3 days, is that all of our heads of state, President Xi of China, President Putin of Russia, President Trump of the United States, Prime Minister Trudeau of Canada, they've all come out in favor of 5G phones and 5G Internet of Things, but that's an AI-driven agenda that is killing the soul. That the 5G technology is set up to kill nature and it's set up to kill the mind and the soul and to
Can you explain
accelerate
that a little deeper?
robotization.
All right, I'm sorry. Can you explain that a little deeper? Like, because a lot of people, they're looking at their phones. Wow, now I got 5G. Please explain to them the reality and the physics or science or whatever it is to the layperson that they should be thinking twice about even handling their phone, or does it even matter at that point?
Yeah. No. Well, look, first of all, we all have control. When I was invited to speak at the Stop 5G Summit, and I said, okay, I'll go. And then I had to study up on it, and I produced a 27-minute film for it. And by the time I did that, I was educated. I said, oh my God, what is this? And at that time, TELUS.net, which is our local Wi-Fi company, had installed 5G in my home without even telling us. So I went, oh no. Well, it's, first of all, you can correct it, okay? Because as soon as I found that out, I called TELUS and I said, you have to come here and you have to bring us down to 2.4G, okay? From 5G to 2.4G. And their workers came and they brought us back down to 2.4G, okay? So we're still within the safe way there. And so I'm just going, while we're talking, I'm just going to the, to get the, since you want more detail, I just want
Well, I think it's really important because then it's an AI plan, and an AI means, which is a form of frequency I'm sure you'll describe or something, or whatever it is, or radiation or whatever it is, to which these transmissions could be sent. But you're saying it threatens actual life, biological, cellular, us.
Yeah, look, I just received today from Belgium a 58-page scientific PDF on the dangers of 5G. I'd be very glad to send you that. And so that you can post it for your listeners. This is hyper technical. And
Yes.
and so it's very difficult to here let me just there are thousands of studies linking low-level wireless radio frequency radiation exposures to a long list of adverse biological effects, including DNA single and double strand breaks. It breaks up your DNA. Oxidative damage, disruption of cell metabolism, increased blood-brain barrier permeability, melatonin reduction, disruption to brain glucose metabolism, generation of stress proteins. Now, just yesterday, the Commander-in-Chief of the United States tweeted that he totally supports 5G and wants to get the United States to 5G and even 6G as soon as possible. And I believe that he is just misinformed, as is President Xi, as is President Putin, as is Prime Minister Trudeau, who are all informed of this because they're under tremendous competition. They're under commercial competition because of all the billions of dollars and the billions of users worldwide and all the cell phone companies. And that's what's going on.
But if that's being a means of a tool by the enemy, we're being given technology, but we're not given it in a safe way. It's being used against us to decimate us.
Yeah, but it's decimating everybody. It's decimating the Americans. It's decimating the Chinese. It's decimating the Russians. It's decimating the Canadians, the South Americans, the Asians, everybody. You see, it's AI. The AI wants to kill us.
but yet they're terraforming the Earth too. Why terraform it? Are they trying to boot us off, keep a certain few here?
They
keep
want
us
to
as
make
slaves?
the planet an AI planet. Humans are obsolete. So the way that you exterminate humans is through a frequency.
The threat coming from deep space, Trump mentioned. This has got to be it. And this has got to be connected to Ronald Reagan's words. And is there not already an alien presence among us?
Yeah, exactly. Look, we did the Instant of Cooperation in 1987. It was the first live radio program between the United States and the Soviet Union in history. It was nominated for an Academy Award. It was nominated for an award on the floor of the General Assembly. And it was carried by Goslar Radio over all 11 time zones of the Soviet Union. It was carried by National Public Radio and the Voice of America. And we were invited to meet Gorbachev. You know, it was supported by all sides, okay? It was supported by all sides. So we were able to it was called the Instant of Cooperation, okay? So we were able to get to that point in 1987. It was in Glasnost and Perestroika, which means restructuring and cooperation. And yeah, and then the artificial intelligence invaded, and that's what's going down.
And
The
Trump,
AI. You see,
about
Jade
it.
Helm. Do you remember Jade Helm 15?
Yes, yeah, and all that.
Jade Helm 15 was how AI was implemented on the ground in the USA and then around the world.
So it's all in the systems and everything now, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. That's why everybody is totally confused. Everybody's going up the wall, and there's chaos. It's the AI. It's not people. It's frequencies.
Exactly, frequencies.
Like the polarization that we have is totally managed. It's totally artificial. It's from frequencies.
Which frequencies, even theoretically, and even proven in some cases, lift heavy things or potential thereof, or change the shapes of sand, like watch them on a speaker, and all these geometric patternings. And I know I'm just being, on the ignorant end of describing.
No. I think you have a very good grasp of what's going on. Yeah, I think that you have an excellent grasp of what the reality of this situation is. And that is that we are under an invasion of an AI. And that is when Ronald Reagan gave his speech with Gorbachev, he said, what would bring the world together? It would be an invasion from outer space. And it's the AI. It's not like the Martians. It's an AI. It's an inorganic artificial intelligence. It's an it.
Then who's left on Mars, since you brought up the Martians? That segues to that again, because then that brings up the time aspects
of what's
going on.
Yeah.
Why would the time be there aspect? Who's running that for what purposes? And the indigenous, if any, on Mars, or is it completely from this humanoid diaspora from, what was that again? That planet?
Draco.
Where the Drake chased them from?
Yeah, Dracos. From the Draco reptilians versus Lyra. All of the humans.
Where was that? Where did they say Lyra was? It wasn't around here, right?
Yeah. Lyra is a constellation in our galaxy. Okay, that's where the humans kind of developed from, and now they're spread all over our universe. Okay, and on Mars now, so that right now there's a situation of tenseness and warfare throughout our galaxy. There's kind of a Star Wars because you have a multi-layered tenseness or kind of Star Wars that's going on. In a way, it's like the best of times and the worst of times.
Pun intended, because of the time travel. I mean, I think that's key to this somehow. I need to figure some things out. That's why I'm trying to hone in on this. Hopefully, you don't mind.
No, it's fine. I think that both. I really appreciate your process, and right now, in our solar system, there are, let's say that there are roughly two sides. There's the light and the dark. Okay.
Yes, listeners,
you know,
show can appreciate that.
Yeah. Let's just put it that way. And the light forces are battling the dark forces for dominance in our solar system, for dominance in our galaxy, for dominance on our planet. That's basically what's going on. And the same thing is on Mars. Now, and on Mars, I've heard many different stories. However, I've heard some pretty bad stories about what's going on Mars. I've heard that Mars is the locality right now of a lot of industrial facilities that are essentially slave factories. That I've heard figures like up to 60 million humans from Earth have been essentially shanghaied and taken to industrial facilities in the solar system, many of them on Mars, that are essentially slave factories.
That's total recall.
Yeah, and they manufacture goods there that are sold off outside of the solar system in intersolar trade and intergalactic trade, and that is controlled by the dark forces, and the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and the movers and shakers on the dark side control that, and that's the breakaway civilization. Okay, but then there's the whistleblowers, all the
Mayans. What happened to the Mayans and all them? Because well, if this isn't new of what's happening on Mars and what you're describing, forgive my interrupting, but I just caught wind of this because it just came to my mind to say it. They wonder, well, what happened to all the bodies, the jungles, everything covered it up, whether it's floods, where are the bodies? Well, maybe Quetzalcoatl took them on a trip to Mars.
Well, no. If you're talking about
from age to
the
age,
Mayans, okay.
No,
there are specific theories that they could travel interdimensionally, okay?
Right, that's true. The portals.
Yeah. And in fact, I know people. I have a colleague who photographs UFOs over Washington D.C., who has photographed traditional Mayans in traditional Mayan dress at the edge of the reflecting pool on Capitol Hill.
Huh.
Yeah. So they even time travel up to Capitol Hill. So they can teleport. And one theory is that the Mayans as a group, they ascended, they teleported out of where they were. And that the Mayan calendar is really a Pleiadian calendar, and that they received input to just teleport, time travel, teleport out of that
Oh,
particular circumstance. At some point.
connected to a different ET race with different technology.
Yeah, so they received input to just time travel, teleport out of where they were. Boom, and they just left. And so what you're left with is just the Mayan pyramids and some of the race that left there, but that their civilization teleported out.
Do you think it could be connected to any of that time technology, to which I'm sure you'll be getting into soon, of maybe what Mr. Bashago and them went through that they could have utilized back then as these portals, travel time?
Well, there's different technologies for time travel. There's the organic portals, and which is probably what the Mayans used. They probably used organic portals and very advanced spiritual science. And what DARPA used and Project Pegasus used was very advanced. They had 8 different forms of time travel technology, which were technological forms of time travel, which were creating vortal tunnels in time. Essentially, what they did.
Where would these portals be on Earth today? If one had access to this technology, would they be able to find them and utilize them? And where do you think that would be? Or can it be anywhere if you have that tech, really, I guess?
Well, I think that exists. We have colleagues who know how to do that, and they take people on expeditions to other places. That's very akin to the portals that go into the inner Earth. Those are organic portals, and so that's not something that we in the surface culture have normal access to. However, people who are raised in the inner Earth culture and are part of that, it's very natural for them. And also people who are raised inside of certain indigenous cultures or certain spiritual cultures here, they're raised with that knowledge.
Okay, I guess that would make sense. See that it's real. All right, now, all right. So what then? Back to the time thing in Mars. I'm sorry, I'm jumping around. My own thoughts run away at times.
No, sure.
But so regards to these time travel missions with the military, what is and whoever, what is that all about then on Mars? Is it with the Draco's will that they do it, or are they doing it to subvert them, or and just jumping around?
On Mars now, as I understand it, we have different reports, but there have been different versions of who dominates on Mars now. And one of the reports that we've gotten is that there was a real challenge to human life on Earth because there was Mars was vital to the defense perimeter of Earth in this solar system, because Earth and Mars were being invaded by an interdimensional species, probably related to the Orion Greys and related to the Draco reptilians. And in that invasion, the Mars was vital to the defense perimeter of Earth. And we've heard various versions of humans, battles and wars between humans and reptilians on Mars currently, and on Earth, and the vouchsafing of Earth as essentially a human, as a predominantly human, safe harbor. And that's kind of where things stand now, although it's very, very dicey.
So in essence, they could make that we're here in the past.
Yeah.
And we came along, you said about this war, they're kind of pissed. They want what in their minds is their planet back, type of thing going on. And on Mars, is that then who constructed the faces of Mars? They all love to say it looks human, like the one in Cydonia. No, it don't. It looks like Cornelius King Kong T-Rex on one side and a lion feline on the other. It does not look human. Hominid. Would that be attributed to the reptilian of what they might look like apish, saurian type profiles?
Yeah. See, all of these are legitimate questions. You can go to exopolitics.com, and there's a whole series of papers. You'll see the early papers of the Mars Anomaly Research Society.
Right.
And then you can go to Facebook, and you can go to the Mars Anomaly Research Society, and they have there's an annual meeting of the Mars Anomaly Research Society, and then questions that you ask are studied by a whole community of scholars, which study the various ruins on Mars and tie them into the civilizations, tie them into current types of reptilians, the current human civilizations on Mars, etc. So that's a really exciting field of study.
It is.
And we've got more than 20 papers of the early papers of the Mars Anomaly Research Society at exopolitics.com.
That's right, everyone. And all these links are going to be added more to the show page, archive page after this show. There wasn't enough time and correspondence to get all these links up now, but that's okay, because it's down through time where this show really counts. As you, the listener, one show at a time, we make our fate to secure this new timeline. And I'm just trying to figure out things here on how we're going to have to approach this. Now, I've read somewhere, didn't you send me a link, sir? This kind of related, but an offshoot. But I think it's important because it caught my eye right away about suing NASA to tell the truth. And I don't know if you've heard, but I've been trying to push the campaign for Dr. Gil Levin's Martian Revelation Life Validation campaign, where we're going to be initiating a petition against her. We'll need 100,000 signatures with Trump and Mike Pence, both very interested in where these issues detail, that we want to demand NASA to place on board Dr. Gil Levin's controlled label release experiments, upgraded, microscopes, all that, and a secret percolator tester. Let's put NASA's theory there that they spin us to rest, end of the test. and then the rest, right? I said that backwards. But the thing is, it's symbolic, yes, but it could be more than symbolic because our voices, our signatures could literally make our fate, and that's what we all must have the balls to do. And now, what I seen you put forth, I would like you to explain that, if you will, about this campaign about suing NASA by other Mars researchers and others about, or make the government. What's that about? And can this petition effort, because Mars Rover 2020 takes off next year, so we got to work fast on this petition. Mr. John B. Wells is also helping set something up where we're going to have Dr. Gill Levin on his show, and we would like to start the petition that night. It's just, I don't know the date yet, but it's upcoming. Does something like this, sir, fall into what that is you posted to me?
Yes. Well, our campaign is that it's time for Mars and the Mars explorers to sue for life on Mars disclosure in U.S. federal court. And look, we're now holding press conferences, we're holding radio programs with the NASA Mars astronauts. We have interviewed now NASA's Mars astronauts. NASA has trained astronauts for Mars who have gone to Mars, and we interviewed them. And it was 3 days after we interviewed the NASA astronauts that they assassinated one of the major Mars whistleblowers, William Whitecrow. That's how heavy duty this is. And that happened in February 10th, a year ago.
All right, so he was with the others. Who were the others? That can you the names?
Yeah, let me get that right. I'll get that right for you right now.
You're not talking about Captain Keyes or whatever his name was, are you?
No. Here we are. We're doing civilian astronaut consultant pilot Ken Johnson Sr. He's a NASA Mars astronaut. Karen Christine Patrick, Brett Colin Shepard. These is actual positions, and so that's something that you can go into U.S. Federal District Court in Washington, D.C. I'm a member of the bar of the District of Columbia. Okay? You can walk into federal court in the District of Columbia and sue now because they don't have a right to cover this up. This is public record.
So could we help also put onto that not just a petition, which is symbolic, but again, we can make our fate. We can actually take the signatures, make it be an issue. But now this is another route you're saying. Can we look, Dr. Gill's going to be 95, sir, if he's not already. His mind is still sharp as a whip, and he deserves vindication and validation for his experiments detecting life, which NASA got mad at him because it did what it was supposed to do. They just didn't expect to find it, which means they were lying to us and stealing from us back then. And, you know what I'm saying? It's like, here's all the toys to play with, that would detect life. It finds it. Uh-oh. Now what? So the policy was in the play. So now, can we utilize to help Dr. Gill Levin, sir, in with such a thing like you just described, to where we can make them put those experiments aboard the rover 2020? Remember, it takes off next year. Is that realistic for this effort?
Well, I don't know about the question of timing, but the question of law, you can seek a writ of mandamus, which is where a federal court orders an agency to do something, which it should do. You see, and here you have a federal court. You go in and you say, look, here's an astronaut that's been on Mars. He trained to be on Mars. He was on Mars. here are all these other people that are part of the federal Mars program. There's some cockamamie person that wants to keep this secret because they want to keep their secret budget going, for whatever. But that isn't how it works. So, make it public. So that's what we have to go for.
Right, but who can we lead? It would be nice to be in sync with this petition. Oh, by the way, Your Honor, here's a petition being launched.
Right.
So.
Exactly, because then, because then maybe the petition signers, could be co-plaintiffs, or they could have some kind of standing.
Or even the general public. We the people have a standing.
Yeah,
that they
exactly.
don't want to have, apparently. They want to kill us off.
Yeah, you see, so now it's time. It's time to move beyond the petition stage. That's my point. It's to go into court and to demand, it's to go into court and to get mandamus. It's to go beyond petition to asking. It's to go into court and demand this stuff.
Who do we know that would do that? That takes money. Like, it would take someone like, hint, hint, wink, wink, your skills, like you said. You said you could walk into a courtroom, declare habeas corpus, you just said.
Yeah. So,
takes money, right?
so we proposed this, and then 3 days later, they assassinated William Whitecrow, who was one of the main whistleblowers.
Let him kill me. Let him kill me. Like I said, I'm going to talk.
Yeah, so all that we have to do is move forward. We can get volunteer lawyers to do this. All of our work from day one in the 9/11 area, in the JFK area, has all been with volunteers. We never had to pay anybody. Nobody's going to pay anybody to do any of this. It's all going to be volunteer lawyers. So once we get all the plaintiffs going, we just have to find a volunteer lawyer in Washington. Half of the people in Washington are lawyers,
Right. Would you be willing to, sir, to advertise and, what I mean advertise, push up the commercial for the petition, and would you support
totally.
the petition?
Oh, yeah. And I would be happy to. I live in.
The more people, the networking, the better. And this is friends.
I'd be happy to do. I'd be happy to network it. To talk with people in Washington who are lawyers. This is something that I've done all of my adult life, and I live on the West Coast. But all you need is phone, fax, email, and Skype, and we can get everything done.
Right, and AI at the moment.
Yeah.
But that's, again, I'm phased back through time and the show to stave off from a future that went a different way. It depends how you look at it through this crazy, Back to the Future type Twilight Zone scenarios, to where, again, Mr. Basiago, he had stated that, in these time missions and stuff, that there was an altercation even on Mars with the inhabitants. I don't fully remember everything off the top of my head of what happened. But again, this time aspect to this and what's going on and moving through time now, if we, the people...
Yeah, in fact,
we make
one
a
of
difference.
those, William Whitecrow was a gentleman. William Whitecrow was Andy Basiago's martial arts instructor in the Mars program and in Project Pegasus. And he and Andy were on Mars together, and William Whitecrow helped protect him during one of those altercations on Mars. And it was 3 days after when we went public with these third wave of the Mars whistleblowers, including the Mars astronaut, that they assassinated William Whitecrow. And that was February 10th, 2018. We're coming up. This is the first anniversary, so that's why we're going with it public tonight.
Now, what do you think he would say or advise after what happened to him? Obviously, it's meant to scare the shit out of everyone, like it's going to spook everyone away. I think quite the contrary needs to happen. Because, look, you just said we could go into court. We have couple different things. We had the low-level petition, symbolic, potential, making our fate vision there, as well as actually going to court, making things happen, because that's, hey, if Ocasio and people could get elected, we could get the answer for life on Mars, let alone break open the bigger disclosures like Mr. Weber's alluding to here.
Exactly. And now we're going to have all of the facts. We're going to have first eyewitness testimony. You're going to walk into the court and say, Your Honor, I trained for this. I was on Mars, da-da-da-da-da. We're going to have firsthand witnesses.
Wouldn't that be great to have Dr. Gil Levin, like he just described about those firsthand witnesses, astronauts? Well, look, they came to me. I had the experiment. It detected life at both spots. And where science is concerned, what more do you need for replication? But it would be nice, since NASA blackballed them, they kicked them in the nuts, basically to kick us in the nuts with their deception. Look for possible signs of life now. Don't say you found actual life. And Mr. Gillivan said no. I mean, right, he had balls because he's seen the corruption. Look, the last proposal that he sent, sir, to them, guess how they respected him in acknowledging it? They sent it home to him in a cab. They didn't even want it acknowledged in the federal mail system that he proposed it. And they keep denying him. He's, 95 now, or close to it. And he deserves this. We, the people, deserve it. And this is only part of the bigger picture anyway, isn't it, to help bring out these other disclosures? Look, to get the answer first. Is Mars alive, yes or no? Boom. Those tests come back positive. That opens the door to bigger questions of the reality that the space program and the secret space program, the time travel aspects, I still got questions about that. How does that apply, and what are they trying to do? Are they working around it, the Dracos, or are they using it by their insistence for
look, the whole secret space program is built around time travel capability, because what they do is that they time travel regress a person for 20 years. So a person goes and is assigned for 20 years in the secret space program, and then when he leaves, that person is regressed 20 years so that he exits the secret space program on the same day at which he or she entered it. And that's how they keep the whole thing secret, by hiding it in niches in time. And they think, oh, aren't we so smart because these civilian Earthlings are so stupid they can't figure it out. Well, that's bullshit. We can bring it into federal court because we have multiple eyewitnesses.
And what if one of these time travelers did something to where they may be able to view other selves, if that makes sense, especially if you look at it in Back to the Future type hypothetical scenarios. Hypothetical, but let's just say, and then they went through that, and then they're back in their life again. They don't know the wiser until one day they get a whoop-de-doo from supposedly what might be their other version of themselves, saying, surprise, check this out. Could that be possible?
Yeah, you see, all of this is possible. Courts are equipped to handle this. The laws of evidence are equipped to handle this. The only reason why it hasn't handled it until now is because of COINTELPRO, because of things like the assassination of William Whitecrow 3 days after our program with the third wave of Mars whistleblowers on February 10th, 2018. That's the only reason. COINTELPRO, period. In other words, sabotage. That's all. That's all. But the laws can do it.
Too much of a coincidence. Then it's like they did it knowing you guys would notice it. They're trying to scare the shit out of you.
Yeah, but it's low level. I mean, that's caveman stuff. That's caveman stuff. That
Right,
is
but
caveman stuff.
Right.
That is straight out of the reptilian playbook. That is straight out of the reptilian playbook. That is primitive reptilian playbook. War,
Fear
disease,
generation
crime,
too.
and poverty, low level COINTELPRO.
Wow. Now, is this now that back to SRI? Did this everything that is going on now? Did any of that have to do with any of those things, or any of the things I mentioned in connection? Again, to the Mars mission, to the remote viewing. How is all that tail into it? And was that also part connected maybe to the secret space program's time travel division? I guess we could call it at this point.
Well,
Hopefully I'm making sense.
yeah. No. I understand. In my opinion,
Mhm.
the Jimmy Carter White House extraterrestrial communication project that was approved in 1977, that we were directors of, and that was to be carried out by the Center for the Study of Social Policy in conjunction with other scientists, and that was stymied by the Pentagon. It was stymied by the Pentagon liaison to SRI. That was done on behalf of the reptilians, of the men in black, of the Department of Defense, that did not want the Jimmy Carter White House and the scientific humans to discover their ties with negative extraterrestrials under the Greada Treaties, and did not want that to become a matter of public record.
Right.
That's why it was pure exopolitics. It was pure exopolitics. They did not want those low-level Greada Treaty-based relations to become a matter of public record. That was it. They had ties with the lowest level scumbags in the galaxy, and they didn't want it to be a matter of public record, which we would have made it a matter of public record.
Do you think Trump knows that? And that's his...
I don't know what Trump knows, because I've never had a conversation with him about this. I have had a tweet conversation with him about something else, but I've never had a conversation with him about this, so I don't know what he knows.
Well, I think a petition/court hearing would get his attention to some of these issues. Or, well, look, he did say the Space Force wasn't just needed to defend ourselves in low Earth orbit from threats coming from Earth, but from the threats coming from deep space. And then he said, look, does anyone here not wish me to sign this? Because you're not going to be happy. You're going to be unhappy if I don't sign this. And telling General Dunford, you got it, General? Now, good luck. Now, go get it. Go get what?
Well, you know, I mean,
it's like, what is he trying to tell the public? It's got to be alluding, I think, to some of these things.
Possibly. I mean, yeah, of course. But I'm a person who likes things to be very explicit, because and not mumbo jumbo, and not assassinating whistleblowers, and not threats and baloney. You know, that let's just be on the table.
Right. And well, we must be, because obviously we got an enemy there that likes to hide behind curtains. Yeah. And that's in all our lives, and it has touched my life. It has touched my mother's life. And I'm not getting into that, but listeners to this show might be able to appreciate those seeds down through time. And I'm here on the mission. I'm back phased through time. We're on the new timeline, and there's many positive truths in this and answers that I'm looking for, especially if I'm regressing myself as it was. This is not a coincidence of why I'm here, of why Mr. Weber's here, why Mr. Bashago is on this show, and why all these other aspects of people through time How much of it is damage control compared to the cover up for the realities of the missions that, well, that's obviously somehow succeeded or gotten through. Why have damage control? And would it be just the Dracos alone? Who's working with them? Do they have other malevolent forces aiding them as well?
Look,
I mean, this raises many questions.
No, exactly. The Dracos are in alliance with the inorganic
AI.
sentient AI. They have formed an alliance for the takeover of planet Earth.
So basically like a Borg for Star Trek fans to correlate.
Yeah.
That is, again, and like you said, through movies and shows, they're breaking us down. We're getting bits and pieces of the truth mixed with lots of bullshit. So they can say when the day comes, plausible deniability. Well, it's always been out there. It's not just my fault. The people are too stupid. They can't figure it out. Just spell their names right. Very interesting. I appreciate you being on. We could go longer if you like. I know there's other things.
No. I would love to come on with you again. But I think that for right now, I'd like to leave it at this stage.
All right. Do you want to leave it at a final end point of maybe to pay for next time of what your assessment of at least looking at tonight and the overall impression? What should we all walk away with, sir? And to make these things happen of which we discussed.
Yeah, I think that what people should walk away with is, number one, all of this is very real. Donald Trump tweeted 2 days ago that he supports 5G and 6G. That is part of the genocidal and ecocidal program to depopulate 6 billion Earth, 4 billion Earth humans, 224 million Americans. So we have to educate President Xi, President Putin, President Trump, Prime Minister Trudeau to get off of these high frequencies and get into natural communications, get rid of the AI. We have to educate them about AI and the negative aspects of AI. And I've got plenty of scientific literature that is unimpeachable. I will send you.
What if they're
I will send
complicit?
I'm sorry?
What if they're all just complicit? Hopefully Trump ain't. But
well, okay.
That's a great danger.
Yeah. I didn't want to get into a demonology. Right. I just wanted to state the facts tonight, and I will send you that PDF so you can see it about the 5G. And I wanted to lay down the facts about the AI. I want to lay down the facts about the Mars whistleblowers being COINTELPRO'd, being assassinated, being blinded. I just wanted to lay down those facts. So all of that is extremely real. I wanted to lay down the facts that we can now go into federal court in Washington, D.C. with eyewitnesses who've been on Mars as federal officers who will testify. Okay, and so that a federal court can issue a mandamus to federal agencies to make this public, which then would have to be published by mainstream media. Okay?
Yes.
So that they can no longer continue this cover-up. Barack Obama, under the name Barry Soetoro, Barack Obama changed his name from Barry Soetoro to Barack Obama in a court in Skookumchuck, British Columbia, here in BC, after he was so instructed by the CIA, after Barack Obama Sr., who was a CIA operative in Kenya, was assassinated in a CIA car accident in Kenya, so he couldn't talk. Okay?
Wow, right. I remember that.
That's how dirty all this shit is. We have to get out of that era. Okay? We're entering the age of Aquarius. Boom. And so we're in a new era now. We're in the era of openness. Because
In the Martian Revelation.
yeah, exactly. So we're in a new ball game. What we've established tonight is a new playing field, and that's where I'd like to begin.
Exactly, not end, but begin. And on that note, sir, thank you very much. And
Thank you.
yeah, I'll look forward to putting those links on the archive page and whatnot. And what did you say that you will provide me that I could give the people some type of report or something?
Yeah, I'm going to give you a 50-plus page PDF that was just sent to me by a scientist in Belgium.
So I could add that up to my
the negative effects of 5G.
Gotcha. That's very important because these are weapons now being used by off-worlders. And obviously all our leaders and those against Trump and we the people, the swamp, drain the swamp rats. Guess who they are? Not of this earth. Reagan was right. And everyone's looking at their screens being programmed. That's why I say pack them and smoke them too, because it helps release the hand of brainwashing, of control. It allows you to think for yourself for a moment. Give yourself the chance. But on that note, thank you very much, Mr. Weber, and we will have another show in the future, right, sir?
Yes.
All right, awesome, and thank you very much for the first-time appearance on the Martian Revelation. I know I asked you several years ago to be a guest on your show to discuss regards to my work and independent Mars research regarding faces of Mars and a certain conspiracy.
Well, look, so we can have a trade and you can come on to my show.
Oh, that'll be great. Sorry, that'll be great. There's lots of things to talk about. But again, thank you very much for being on, and we shall be in touch. I'll await that PDF, sir.
Okay.
All right, you have a good night.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So there you have it, people. Mr. Andrew Lambremont Weber. Well,